Hey everybody, it's Leeroy from Leeroy Gaming with another Outriders video for you today. And today we're going to be looking at my Pyromancer, and this is going to be the lazy build for the Pyromancer class. The idea of my lazy boy builds is to work with a 5-piece set without having to go and deep dive to farm the optimal epic pieces of loot to fill the gloves and the boots, for example. This is meant to be utilized with the New Horizons update. It is so much easier now to farm legendary loots that between the increased drop rates and the ability to gamble on legendary loots, it is just so much easier to get 5-piece bonuses than ever. And this build, while it may not compete with the Akari set when it comes to meta builds, if you like phasers, so if you like sniping with abilities, if you like the big eruption ability, well, this is a very, very fun and effective build. It also has a very high skill ceiling. I'm not great at it, but if you're good at sniping multiple targets at the same time and timing cooldowns, you can get quite effective with this, and it is very fun. At the very least, it's a nice change of pace compared to the same old cookie cutter Akari builds. So, as with all my videos, remember guys, you're going to find timestamps below. I'm going to be covering skills, skill trees, equipment. We're going to do a full CT15 run through, and also I'll teach you how to utilize the different skills and the timing and so forth. So, utilize those if you wish. As always, if you want to help the channel out and you like the content, drop a like and drop a comment. Let me know what you like to see, what you like about this content, what you don't. Do you like the new Lazy Boy builds or not? Love to hear it. And I will be doing my best to give you more content into the new year, especially with the expansion on the horizon. All right, guys, that being said, let's go ahead and jump in and take a look at my new Pyromancer build. All right, as always, we're going to go ahead and start with the skills. And so, since we are using a full Lava Lich set, we do want to lean into the two main skills that are going to be highlighted by the set. And that's going to be the Phaser Beam and Eruption. Eruption with the set bonus is going to get some nice buffs. Around the New Horizon update, they did buff the set for this to give it, make it do more damage and I believe lower the cooldown. So the Eruption cooldown isn't quite as bad as it used to be. 16.2 seconds is where I have it here, and that's pretty decent. Phaser Beam is also going to be a hard-hitting ability that, if you time it correctly, will also buff your anomaly power for your follow-up attacks, namely Eruption. Ash Blast can be used as an AoE crowd control, but with the mods you're going to see during the armor section and the mod section, you're going to notice that this is also going to buff your anomaly powers. So if you kind of time your Ash Blast with your Phaser Beam and your dual eruptions, you can kind of snowball your damage if you do it correctly. This is one of the reasons why this build has a really high skill ceiling. It's not as meta and nearly as high damage as most of the kind of easy peasy Akari builds, but you're going to notice that it's a fun playstyle, especially if you like the Phaser Beam ability you see here and the Eruption ability, which is always very satisfying and it looks really, really cool. Now, with the class nodes, it's very important to note that with the changes of the New Horizon update, the anomaly power nodes got buffed from 6% to 10% each. Basically, what that translates to is, for a pure anomaly power build, it's almost mandatory, if you're not going with the Akari set, to go down the Tempest tree to get enough anomaly power to make things work. Now we're basically going down the main line here all the way till the end so we can get the buff to the explosive damage. We want to get all the cooldowns along the way. We're also going to pick up Extinction here to do more damage to enemies below 20% health. And the only variant here is we're going to come up the top of the Ash Breaker just to get Marble Orchard to lower your Ash Blast cooldown by 15%, which is helpful. We also come up here. We love this Wildfire, 10% cooldown for all abilities, and also pick up Warm Up over here as well. So these are all going to be kind of quite useful for you. Now, when it comes to weapons, I like using the Damascus offering for this build. because it has a very large clip size. We don't really care too much about the actual damage of the actual gun. What we care about is proccing Claymore Torrent that comes with it. So every roughly 2 seconds, you're gonna do this 200k plus base damage across up to 4 enemies. So as long as you're shooting this at something every 4 seconds, you're kind of getting the damage output you need out of that. We do utilize Fortress on this. Now, the way the updated Fortress mod works is that you do have to make sure that you shoot this a couple of times on enemies to get this stacked up. So the way it works is you want to get a couple shots off, roughly 3 shots within a second, which is great with the Damascus offering because of it. It's really high RPMs. Proc the Fortress buff, and then you can go ahead and spam your abilities. For a secondary weapon, you can go ahead and just get a Moaning build weapon. I like using Moaning Wind, so the Enamoi. I again changed the transmog look to this so it kind of fit the theme of the Lava Lich set a little bit better. But the Enamoi is great because it comes with Moaning Winds, and then you can get Radiation Splash on there. So situationally, if you get mobs around you or all your abilities are on cooldown, you can swap over to the Enamoi, get the Moaning Winds and Radiation Splash, and also apply vulnerability to the enemies in an AoE, which is a nice combination. And then go ahead and swap back to the Damascus offering and start spamming that Claymore Torrent. Do remember that vulnerability will basically increase the damage of the mod damage by an additional 15%, which is nice. Now, when it comes to armor, again, we are going with the 5 pieces of the Lava Lich set, and this is why this is the Lazy Boy set. Again, with the changes that came with the New Horizon update, between all the previous buffs to legendary drop rates and now the ability to gamble legendary pieces really easily, your ability to get a 5-piece set like this is much easier, and it's much easier than, you know, farming the optimal epic items. Traditionally, most people with this set would get the helmet, the chest and legs, and then min-max the gloves and the boots so that you no longer have to deal with the firepower or lack of anomaly power on these 2 pieces. And you can still do that, but again, if you're a beginner or this is your first Pyromancer and you just want to get a really fun set for whatever reason, if you didn't get the Akari set yet, or you kind of didn't want the traditional Akari build and want to try out this new set bonus and play with the eruption ability and the phaser ability, then this is the way to go. Now let's take a look at the actual mods that we want on this. So with the helmet of the Lava Lich, we're going to keep Ashen Champion, which is critical. So this inflicts ash on enemies instead of burn. And then each enemy hit boosts your anomaly power by 20% for 10 seconds, stacks up to 5 times. So basically what you're trying to do is line up and snipe as many enemies as you can, up to 5. And then you're going to get this 10-second bonus, after which you can go and use your eruption abilities and again get upwards of 100% extra anomaly power. Now, yes, I know this pales in comparison to the Akari set bonus, for example, but working with the Lava Lich set, this is about as good as we can get. And don't forget, you're going to get that set bonus of increases damage of eruption by 40%, and then everything else is modified on top of that. And that buff to the cooldown to 30% really makes it much more usable compared to how it was before. Now for the second mod, we want to put up power assimilation. This is a mainstay when it comes to anomaly power sets. It's going to garner you anywhere between 11,000 and 30 to 40,000 anomaly power, depending on what mission you're running and what elite mods are out there. Now for the chest piece, again, we're also sticking with the Lava Lich set. And we're keeping the Giga Blast Tier 1 mod, which increases the skill's radius by 100%. Again, because the cooldown on this ability and the damage is relatively high on both, you want to make sure you hit as many enemies as you can of the ability whenever possible. So doubling the radius is worth it, especially for Tier 1 mod. Now for the other mod, you could go with a more offensive mod, but what I found is this build without at least one form of defensive mod to increase your armor, feels pretty squishy. But if you add damage absorber, which is active all the time, it does enough to where you basically never die the majority of the time. As long as you're spamming your abilities, the rotation, it's quite tanky, and it feels really solid. So this is what I would recommend for you. When it comes to the leg armor and its mods, again, we're fortunate that the actual set has really, really nice stats. And so what we basically have here is we keep improved damage, which has increased the base damage of your eruption. Now again, 54,000 may not seem like a lot, but this is your base damage. So all those multipliers, those percentage-based multipliers, work off of this. So this actually ends up counting for quite a bit more than 54,000 damage. And it's also why it's a tier 3 mod. Now the mod I chose as the secondary one is Unstoppable Force. Now, you're not really stacking resistance piercing on this build, unfortunately, but what basically you can easily get is still the equivalent of 15% resistance, and that 15% resistance equals another 7.5% of anomaly power. So that works out pretty well. There are a couple other mods you can get for just baseline, about 10k or so anomaly power on average, but your anomaly power gets high enough actually to where the 7.5% ends up being a higher net positive all the time. Again, you don't have to proc it, there's no downtime, it's just up. That this 7.5% I have found tends to be more effective once your overall anomaly power gets high. Remember, just sitting here, even without any buffs up, you're sitting at 152k anomaly power. That's easily going to get between 300,000 and 400,000 once fully buffed. So 7.5% of that is quite significant. So don't let this fool you. Don't let the fact that you're only stacking 7.5 or 15% resistance piercing on this build fool you. Now for the gloves, what's nice is it comes with Etna. Eruption, so it lets you cast Eruption twice. Now do note that there's also a tier 1 version of this where it basically does the same exact thing, so you can stack them and make it so you can proc a total of 3 of these. But the way I have built this out is that you're only using 2, because again, you're going to notice we have 2 defensive mods that help you stay pretty tanky. Now, frequent phaser reduces the skill cooldown for phaser beam by 30%. This is a must. This allows you to basically spam phaser beam on a regular basis, and since that buffs your anomaly power as well, this is pretty much mandatory, and it's a really, really nice tier 1 mod. And finally, on the legs, it comes with Circle of Power, and if you were to kind of min-max and get epic boots, you may decide to roll a more offensive mod here if you're feeling pretty tanky, but I will tell you, stacking this 3 times is pretty easy as you're using abilities a lot. And remember, you can also just punch the air if you want, and that counts as a skill. So this is up to 45% resistance, and that's a significant decrease in the damage that more often than not kills people. A lot of the anomaly power ability is a monster. So especially if you're a beginner and you're playing this caster kind of class that can be squishy if you're not careful, this is actually a pretty good beginner mod, and a lot of people keep it on all the way throughout. Now the other mod that's key here is you want to get Death Sentence on here. Now this is a luxury, not everybody's going to have this right away, but this is what makes your Ash Blast turn from kind of an AoE procer and CC to also a damage buff, because once you get this off, it's going to increase your anomaly power by 30% for 8 seconds. So again, this is when you use your Ash Blast as a setup before you spam your eruptions, for example. So this is what you definitely want. Now, as I mentioned before, if you do want to kind of min-max this, you can definitely re-roll this and get pick a different mod instead of Circle of Power on here. Now, if you want a recommendation What you can do is you can go ahead and get the tier 1 version of the Etna. It's, I forget the name of it, but it is the same exact descriptor. You can basically activate eruption one more time. So you can roll that on your boots and then throw death sentence on that. And technically from a DPS standpoint, that's going to be more effective. You can now spam eruption 3 times in a row before you get that cooldown going. So that's a good replacement for that if you're going to go for boots that have cooldown, status power, and anomaly power. And the gloves are the other ones you would want to replace. Again, you just want to change them out for epic gloves that have cooldown reduction, status power, and anomaly power. And again, the big thing here is you want to roll them with frequent phaser, which is huge. And then you're going to put Etna on them. And you would need to basically find Charms of the Lava Lich one way or another so you can break them down. And then you can basically save the Etna thing into your, or mod into your catalog and apply it to the epic gloves. So those changes, basically you'd be looking at extra 28,000 or so base anomaly power, which is definitely nothing to sneeze at. But with that being said, even without that, just running this with these 5 set bonus is still quite fun, powerful enough. Again, it's not going to be a meta build, but if you are somebody that likes the eruption ability, likes the challenge of kind of lining up snipes and getting those buffs up manually, it's a really fun feeling alternative to some of the other builds. Okay, let's talk about weapon and skill rotations. So whenever you enter a room, you want to kind of start by shooting things. And in order to proc the fortress buff, you're going to want to shoot things roughly 3 times within the first second. And you're going to get a nice 10-second buff of fortress. Now, don't forget the other mod on the weapon also procs every 2 seconds. So you can spam that as you go. And then when you get optimally multiple enemies kind of lined up, you can go ahead and start the phaser ability. Now notice there is a bit of a wind up, and it is a little hard to aim because you can't really move that much once you start channeling it, but you get kind of used to it. And so as you can kind of see here, I'm going to start phasing again. Notice, you know, I moved, but it doesn't, even though I moved my my kind of aimer, it didn't really move that far at all. And so hopefully they'll do a bunch of damage, but then for every enemy you hit, you're going to get that 20% buff to your anomaly power. At that point, you have one of 2 options. You can then, if you have a nice priority target, you can go ahead and hit the Ash Blast. That's going to give you, for 8 seconds, 30% anomaly power. And you can spam your eruption. Obviously, here I don't have a target, so it's not going to work, but you can double spam it or spread it out. If you didn't time it right, you can, you know, always hold on to the Ash Blast as a crowd control, because again, it will stun everything in quite a decent AoE actually. So again, if you're in a tough spot, save it for survival mechanisms. And if you want to min-max the damage, then again, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to either hit it right before the phaser blast if you're going to be really good at timing things, or if you just want to play safe and min-max your eruption damage, then get that phaser attack on. As soon as that's done, get the Ash Blast and then spam your 2 versions of the eruption. And also, if you want to really weave in between the abilities, you can go ahead and just get a shot off on the primary target, because again, there's going to be some wind up for the phaser blast. By the time you're done casting it, your 2-second kind of proc window for your weapon shot is going to be ready, so you can technically get that torrent off right before you phaser blast, right after you phaser blast, then shoot the target again, then Ash Blast, potentially shoot them again, and then get your double eruptions. So as I mentioned, it has a very high skill ceiling. You can kind of weave your shots in with your abilities, and then don't forget rather, every 10 seconds or so, you got to make sure that you're shooting enough, which you should be able to with this build, to keep getting refreshing or redoing your fortress buff. Now next, I'll go ahead and show you a full CT15 playthrough of this playstyle. Again, I'm by no means a pro at this. This is not a build I play that often, even though I did find it a nice, fun alternative. but as you get better and better at aiming, you can get quite effective at this and being being quite a skilled sniper. But as you'll notice here, I still mopped up the CT15 with relative ease, and again, this is with just this base gear, a 5-set bonus, non-optimized epic gear, and again, not being that great at the playstyle. So enjoy, and I'll see you on the flip side. right, I hope you guys enjoyed that. If you did enjoy this build, as always, if you want to support the channel, make sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. If you want to be notified on new videos that I make, I do cover looter shooters, RPGs, action RPGs. That's kind of my jam. Anything cooperative as well here. So that is always helpful if you do join and subscribe. Also, make sure to check out my Discord. You can see a link to it in the description below. Yeah, there's a great little community there that's growing. It also has a great place if you do want to find groups for Outriders or any other games that I cover. That's a decent little place to come and drop by. Hope to see you there. I also do respond there as well. All right, guys, that being said, thank you so much for the support as always, and I will see you guys in my next video.